This week, we're focusing on the immediate future of the Cleveland Browns, the free agency parts and the draft. And to talk free agency, I brought in my guy from 92.3 The Fan, also from his own channel, The Shop, GBUSH. How you doing today, man?
And what's up, man? Glad to talk to you, man. It's always a pleasure touching base with you, man. And getting it in, man.
Yeah, see, I've been on GBUSH's show a couple of times, did some drops there. Now I'm not playing the away game. Finally, I brought him here. He's on the road this time. So, GBUSH, happy to have you on here. Let's talk about some of this free agency stuff. And just in your opinion, this being such a different situation what Browns fans are used to, obviously not only the winning, but the playoff winning, the success there, and the youth that you have with this team. Even in 2008, you didn't have a real quarterback after you went 10-6. This is a much different situation. So how do you think that changes what the Browns philosophy is going to be this offseason to what it's always been in previous years?
Man, I think I was talking about this the other day. I think it's now you getting into a situation where you build your team in stages, right? When you're a young business or a young organization, you're looking to just get a foothold into the game, right? You may try a new scheme out. You may be trying a new business model out, and you're trying to figure out, what the consumer, what people want out there in the community as far as starting a business. But then after a while, once you understand what your niche market is, what you're going to sell, what are you doing out here, then you have to kind of go through the process of getting things up and running, make sure your operations are good, and then getting sustainability as far as making sure that your product is up to par and have sustainability in terms of your coaching staff and anything that you do, front office and players. And then you get to a stage where now you're kind of there. You've had some success. Maybe you get a couple of awards for, if you're doing a restaurant. Maybe you get a couple, awards if you're into acting or whatever the case may be. In the case for the Browns, you beat the Steelers, you make the playoffs. Now, instead of turning your roster over, looking for people that are ball players that is going to be with you for the future, now you have those guys that are the leader or your team. Now you can look to augment your roster with some people that can give you an upgrade at certain position, that can come in and give you some leadership, that can come in and give you some spot plays and make some big plays and some big downs, during the postseason or during big games in the division. So I think the Browns are at a point right now where they're finally able to start doing what other teams were doing, which is now instead of young guys all the time, let's look at some of these veterans that are interested in coming to our program because now we have the foundation laid.
Yeah, so speaking of those veterans, who are guys you're interested in for the Cleveland Browns picking up, or you think the Browns should consider bringing in?
Well, it's so funny, man. We was talking about it a little bit. I think we was texting back and forth. One of the guys is already up out of here. The guy Richard Sherman. Like I think Baker was there. Is like we're gonna stick a little low on Richard Sherman.
Right, I remember that handshake he lied about on 4K.
Yeah,
I'm not about to do that.
Nah, he ain't shake hands with me. I don't forget nothing. Baker don't be forgetting. Also, Richard Sherman, like you said, man. You look at him. Richard Sherman's one of them guys on Madden, right? He's still like probably an 88 overall. But what is his injury? What is his speed looking like? What is his agility looking like? So the Browns are kind of out on that player. So that came out last week, but I'm encouraged because the main prize is JJ Watt. And I feel like JJ Watt can really do some of the things that we really have been looking for a long time. I think he got some really good years left in him. I talked to Landry Locker in 610 down in Houston, and he talked about how JJ Watt got a lot left. He got a lot left in the tank. And I think that's a guy that really can, because we've been looking for somebody with Myles Garrett for how long? How many years are we going to keep saying, can we get somebody to go with Myles Garrett? I think if you can get that guy, I think it changes the way you can approach the draft. You can look to go take a couple people in your back end. But I really think that I like JJ Watt a lot, like him a lot.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because like they've done moves, right? Like to try to get somebody next to Miles, but it's always been kind of this like, oh, let's get a little cute about it, right? Okay, we're gonna see if Manuel Agba could be the guy, and then they went towards the route of okay, well, let's see if we can get like a kind of up and coming guy in Olivier Vernon. Yeah, he's older, but he's still like 28. See if he can hit his prime with Myles Garrett. They've never just dedicated themselves to just getting that next bona fide star next to Myles Garrett. And that's where I'm like, I think they need to do something along those lines. It could be JJ Watt. It could not. JJ Watt could be signed by the time this video gets released. I don't know what the situation is going to be with JJ Watt. I would love to get JJ Watt on this team. I think he had a very good season last year. If you look at the advanced number, very similar to Myles Garrett. I covered that in a video I did, I think, a couple of days ago. So I do think JJ has a lot. But you need to get him a bona fide star, or somebody who has had success, not just 1 year, multiple years over. And when I hear people suggest Carl Lawson, no disrespect to Carl Lawson, I think he's going to be a tremendous player. I just don't want to take a gamble on somebody you're hoping to take a step when you put the Myles Garrett, just because you've done that before. I think you're better. You're not going to do it, right? The Browns aren't going to do it, but you're better off doing something like a Shaquille Barrett or somebody is going to be able to produce, or at the very least command attention because they've done it before. That's one of the key things, right? You can produce at the same level. Olivier Vernon and JJ Watt could produce at the same level and get the same amount of sacks, even though it's not really the amount of production there. But JJ is always going to command more respect and attention than Olivier Vernon. That's another thing, right? You look at how teams were defending against Myles. They were just throwing everybody at him. And that's the one thing I do think they need to address. How do you think the Browns solve this problem to where, one, Myles Garrett's taking way too many snaps early in the season. He looks like he's exhausted by the end of the season. And two, the difference. I know you've seen it, right? When Myles is out there to when Myles is not. How do they fix that gulf of level of play? Because it's going to be a gulf with the guy as talented as Myles is when he's not out there. But it has to be reasonable because, again, I think I said it on your show, whenever Myles leaves the field, everybody's offense, no matter who you played, just press the triangle button and spam the hurry up. To score.
Get on the ball.
Myles isn't out there. And that's a real problem if you don't have an answer for it, because then they can just effectively hack a Shaq, your best defensive end out of the game plan.
I think they got to address depth. The first thing is, and I'm gonna jump back a little bit. You said something that's very interesting. I think is important for people in its context to understand. All production isn't created equally, right? Olivier Vernon and JJ Watt can have the same level of production. However, when you look at what JJ Watt is doing as far as causing havoc, as far as double teams, as far as what you have to do to your pass protection to make sure he's not disrupting your game plan, that's two different levels. Also talking about what JJ Watt can do in the run game, one of the smarter players in the game, run game, stout, and he's versatile in terms of what you can do and move him inside and outside. He could play in a head up in a four tech. He can go four eye inside shoulder. He can five technique if you want to. If you want to do some stuff, he can kick down and some down and distance in the sub package and rush, sparingly in the three. I wouldn't keep him down there, but he can do those type things. So I think Myles, when you look at Myles Garrett and JJ Watt together in that tandem, now you got to pick. You can't just sit there and spam, I'm going to slide my protection that way and keep it tight end over there, because now you got somebody you need to worry about. I think the Browns need to really concentrate on finding another young guy that they can develop that person into. I think one of the big things is when you look at teams that get good, right? I go back to the Giants a couple years ago. They had they had Strahan. You had Osi Umenyiora. Then you had Justin Tuck. What really made them great was they developed Justin Tuck. Justin Tuck came out of nowhere, and he was able to they were able to play three of those guys, and they were able to beat the Patriots, who had one of the best years of all time. They were able to do that because they developed that young guy, and now you have another young guy in your mix. So who is that? I thought Chad Thomas was a guy that showed some level of promise. But they didn't evidently feel like he was that guy. They can get a couple dudes third, fourth round to pick up some of that slack and maybe a developmental pick or whatever. But they got to develop somebody and they got to get another veteran. So you got to stack that defensive line because, as you know, if they want to drop in coverage and not bring heat, you got to have pass rushers.
Yeah, again, we don't know. JJ Watt could be signed by the time this video gets released. So I don't want to tease Browns fans if he signs like Green Bay, Pittsburgh, or somewhere. But the thought of Myles Garrett and JJ, because here's the thing about that pairing that's like significant. It's not just like, oh, they're two good edge rushers. No, they're two good edge rushers that can play anywhere on the defensive line. And when you talk about a defensive line that does not like to blitz a lot with Joe Woods' defense, they one of the least blitz percentages defense in the NFL. They like to rely on that secondary. When it comes to disguising these blitz, when it comes to simulating pressure, you need dudes who could play inside and outside as your edge rushers, because then you cannot blitz, but still keep the offensive line guessing. And then when it's at the caliber of Myles, imagine Myles Garrett, JJ Watt next to each other. Imagine Myles Garrett, JJ Watt on the inside with each other with Claiborne and maybe a Porter Gusler, or maybe you even upgrade those backup edge positions so you have something really crazy. Like, there is a ton of versatility, and I think that's the key word for this offseason is versatility. You want to find somebody who can help you be more versatile in the secondary. You already have some pieces there with Grant Delpit and Ronnie Harrison that are versatile. You want to add to that versatility in the secondary. You want to become more versatile in your defensive line, because I think one of the things that I've hit on with this Browns defense is that you'll have games where they put up good performances. You'll be like, oh, this defense isn't that bad. And then there'll be games where they look absolutely awful, and that's because they weren't, in my opinion, very versatile. If their personnel is lined up to do like a specific amount of things, which is stop play action a little bit and then stop the outside zone run, like they can do those two things really well. And when they played the Tennessee Titans, what did they do? Those two things really well. They just aren't versatile enough to do other things well or be able to adjust the changes, which is why you saw teams come back on them in the second half of games, is because they weren't a very versatile defensive unit that once Tennessee changes it up, spreads it out, they had an answer. They can have an answer for one or two things on defense. They don't have a ton there. So I think if you're Andrew Berry, your eye should be on versatility, because I think that, if anything, was holding the Browns defense back. Now, one of the things that was definitely holding the versatility back was the lack of speed in the back end for the secondary. Do you think the Browns are going to be able to address that? Because I had Jake Burns on earlier this week. I was talking to him about this. And one of the things I mentioned was the Grant Delpit situation is so weird to where you're not going to know if he's going to be ready to go until about August, and that's way too late. And it's like you have to either make a decision. Do you carry on as if Grant Delpit isn't going to be a big part of 2021? Or do you carry on as if Grant Delpit and just trust that he will be back? Because if he is back by August, he will play in the first month of the season. It's just you're not going to know what he's going to be looking like physically until then. So if you're Andrew Berry, how would you kind of operate around that weirdness with the safety? Do you go out and just say, I'm gonna get a real big solution, sign him here, and worry about the long term with Grant, even though you invested a second round pick in him? Or do you say, hey, I invested a second round pick, I'm seeing the guys in other leagues come back from the Achilles, I feel like I can trust Grant to be Grant, and to be the young guy we were hoping is going to develop in that way?
I think with injury, you got to take it as this. In the league, you can draft somebody and, they can have all the promise in the world. And you can have guys that you think have talent but can't stay on the field. You have to operate in those cases, in those scenarios, as if that player is not going to be there. I'm always a big fan of operating under the assumption. Because, look at Rodney Harrison. Like he's going to be a guy that's going to be a contributor for your team moving forward, and it looks like a steal to get him where they got him. You always operate under those assumptions, because then what you can do is, if Grant Delpit comes back and you hope and cross your fingers that he does, guess what? You just move him back and you can work him in slowly and you got something there, right? But you can't do that if you don't address that position. It's the same with Greedy Williams. Those injuries are very difficult to come back from. Especially Achilles heel. Basketball players have a tough time with that, but we're talking about change of direction. We're talking about now you being off, a long period of time. That's going to take some time to get used to. How is his speed coming back? Is he still going to be able to be as mobile to cover the guys that he was covering before and be that Swiss Army knife that you wanted to be. All that's yet to be established. So I need to get me a safety. I need to operate like Greedy Williams. The nerve issue in his neck is going to not work out, and I need to get me a corner. You got to do those things, but if you can, it just shores up what you're gonna be able to do, because then you will have those guys back, and you can just have more depth added at that position. And what we all know is, the season is so long. You're gonna lose somebody. You don't ever want to say you're gonna lose somebody for a sustained period of time every single year. It's just about who it's going to be.
All right, last thing in this free agency portion I want to talk about is the guys that the Browns are going to have up for retainment. They have a ton of guys this year. I believe Larry Ogunjobi on the defense, BJ Goodson, Malcolm Smith, Carl Joseph, Andrew Sadejo, Terrence Mitchell. A lot of those guys on the defense are available. Offensively, not as thick of a list. I think it's just Rashard Higgins and maybe Kendall Lamb and then, everybody else. I don't really think correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't think there's that many big names offensively, or even any big names other than Higgins, who's a big name in the local area. So what do you see them doing as far as retainment? Who do you think they're gonna bring back, and who do you think is gonna be a priority?
I think Hollywood Higgins is a guy that definitely is coming back on his team. Just having Stefanski on at the Fan. I think Kevin Stefanski was on a couple days after the season ended, and he talked about how Hollywood Higgins was just, a guy that they really liked, a guy that really went out there. He left a lot of it on the field, and on top of that, he did what he did was he didn't complain when he wasn't getting the reps. There's everybody in Cleveland, you know how it was. Hollywood Higgins was the most popular dude in Cleveland for the last 2 years. Every time they would call up to the show, they're like, yo, GBUSH, what's going on with Hollywood? How come every time we see him, he catches touchdowns and he can't even get in the game? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they just like the rest of the receivers, man. Maybe want to get it. But when he got into the game, and when OBJ went down, I think they really saw something in him. And I think he's going to be back. When you look at the defensive side of the ball, here's where it gets tricky, because we want to upgrade at so many different positions, but it's so difficult to do that in one season. Like, you look at that. I didn't think Malcolm Smith played all that bad. I thought he had some games where he flashed. And Goodson, despite what people would say, I mean, he was pretty much your most consistent linebacker, I would say, right? I mean, he didn't embarrass himself out there. When you're looking at guys that you need to build a roster, you got to look and say, okay, well, what guys are serviceable and where can we upgrade? And if you can't upgrade, you just got to keep serviceable. But it's all about what the serviceable price is for Mr. Goodson. So we'll see what that is. But I didn't think I think that would be a nice guy to bring back, even if that guy was just a depth piece. When you're looking at in terms of the secondary, boy, Sadejo, yeah, he's gone. Yeah, he was a coach anyway. He was a coach on. He was a coach on the field anyway. He
could be a good backup, man. Come on.
He was a coach anyway. He had 1 foot in the coaching game. Wow. He was already collecting some checks coaching back there. Shout out to him. I will say this though too, man. I used to give him a hard time, man. I used to give him a hard time, bro. But I'm gonna tell you what, he played hard. He got there was a game, I forget which game this was. There was a play on the goal line, and he could have made a business decision. Like I think it was Jacksonville. Yeah. He could have made a business decision, right? And I'm like, man, is Sendejo's going? Is he gonna he's gonna fill this alley? He's gonna fill the alley, and he met a guy in the hole. And I think he left everything he had on the field. That was it. That was the time he was like, yeah, I'm done. Next year, like, we all make decisions. Like when you break up with somebody, you be like, I'm done. This is it. It happens that way on football. You be like, yeah, that young guy just laid me out. I don't got nothing left. So shout out to him. But the linebacker core, I think we got to keep Goodson. I would keep him if it's at the right price. And Ogunjobi is the elephant in the room. I don't think Larry's going to be back with us. I just don't think he is. He's a smallish D tackle. I thought we was just going to work with him and try to get that. We were just talking about that Aaron Donald game plan. Quick, aggressive over field, but he gives up a lot in the run game. The run game, he's just. But the crazy thing is, I think he'll get a check somewhere. I think somebody gonna sign him. I think he'll get a check.
I just don't think the Browns offer him a great fit because what he's good at, and he is good as a pass rusher. He's a very good interior pass rusher. It's just the Browns asked him to be on the field as a 3-down line, and he just has not been that. And if you have him out there, he can be abused, especially like, again, shotgun runs were an issue with this team all year. And it was almost always in Larry Ogunjobi's direction. No disrespect to Larry. It's just, that's the truth. That's what the film says. And that's always been a problem. But if he goes somewhere that maybe they play more defensive linemen or maybe they have more of a rotation going, he can be a very good player there. Like, I don't think Larry Ogunjobi's career is going to end in Cleveland. I don't think this is the best fit. I think he's going to have be better used, I would say.
Yes, he's a guy that you put in. He's a guy you put in when you want to spell somebody in the middle, and he can give you that third quarter. You bring him in and you say, "Wow, who's this kid? He just flashed on that play." He's one of those guys that can do that in the pass game.
He's one of them dudes at the Ravens son. I hate to say it, but he's one of them dudes at the Ravens son.
But that's a whole nother story. And they end up getting a big deal. You'd be like, the Ravens is always developing a tweener to get like $60 million somewhere. But you know how they do.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens there with Larry Ogunjobi. A bright future for him. I just don't know necessarily in Cleveland. But that's gonna end the free agency portion of this video. G, let them know to find you, man.
Man, you can find me at GBUSH91 on Twitter. You can find me. You can listen to the Barbershop every Saturday, 8 to 12. And then you can listen to the interviews in on the radio.com app. And also you can subscribe to the Barbershop page on YouTube. And coming up, we'll be starting to do the live. So you can check out gbush.live. And we will be doing a live every Saturday coming up, starting the first show will be this Saturday. So we'll start that 12 to 1. You can check out gbush.live.
Check it out, man. GBUSH was everywhere this season when it comes to Browns coverage on 92. Look forward to him having an even bigger season next year. Thank you for coming on, G-Lau. We're going to talk about that draft, but that's going to happen for tomorrow for y'all watching. But thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.